Ladies and gentlemen, the show we've all been waiting for, Paranormal Buzz Radio is proud to present REP Paranormal and Friends with your hosts, Kim Purvis and Allison Robinson. Live every Thursday night on Spreaker, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific. Be sure to check out their Facebook page, REP Paranormal Busters.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
All right, welcome everybody to another night of REP Paranormal and Friends. We have a special guest tonight. We have Jeff, is it Belanger? Did I say it right?
You did.
Okay, perfect. I always feel like I'm going to butcher it. So welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just kind of start off for some people who may not know who you are. If you could just give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Well, I'm an author. I've written 15 books on the paranormal that have been published in 6 languages. So if you're in Russia, das Vidanya.
We
right?
do have some listeners in Russia every now and then, believe it or not.
Well, they can get the books, one of my books in Russian, The World's Most Haunted Places. I also am the founder of ghostvillage.com, which has been around for 20 years online. I'm the writer and researcher for the Ghost Adventure series on the Travel Channel. I've been doing that since episode 1. And I also host a show on PBS called New England Legends, and I host a weekly podcast called New England Legends. So I'm pretty much an all-around paranormal guy, and I've been doing it for over 20 years now.
Yes. Okay, so going into that, how did you get interested in the paranormal? Because I think we were listening to one of your, 30-odd minutes, and you did, the Lizzie Borden house.
Yep.
And I thought I heard you say you've only had maybe a couple experiences. Was it just
That's true.
So
no,
how did you
that's still true.
Okay, so how did you get interested in it then?
Yeah, so I grew up in an old New England town, and I had a friend down the street who said his house was haunted, and I thought that was really interesting. You know, it was a really old house, and I conned a sleepover out of it and would break out the Ouija board and try to make contact and stuff like that, and I just thought, this is awesome, right? And it wasn't like a Hollywood ghost story. It was just someone else lives here with us. And this is back in the early 1980s, mid 1980s. You got to remember, ghosts were still in the closet back then.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So not like today. And I just thought, wow, this is not like Hollywood. It's just sort of very matter of fact. And even though I didn't see a ghost back then as a kid, I didn't think he was lying. And I also grew up in the town next to Ed and Lorraine Warren. So I've known them since I was 12, 13 years old. I've known them, been to their house, met Annabelle, the whole thing. And so I grew up around them. And yeah, so I just kind of was steeped around it. And I started in all this as a journalist, writing for newspapers. I love the stories, the history. And I would go writing these feature stories around October for newspapers and magazines. And then that turned into my website, ghostvillage.com, back in 1999. And then I started writing books. And it's just kind of one thing snowballed into another.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, actually, Kim has one of the books that you wrote with Nick Groff, Chasing Spirits.
Yeah, right. That's Nick's story.
But I want to borrow it from her.
Well, I gave it to you last week.
I know, she gave it to me last week, but like I said, I've been kind of sick, so I haven't really had the time to do it. But, excuse me. Got the frog in my throat. All right, so anyways, you have been a researcher and things for Ghost Adventures. I mean, how long are you still doing it, or?
Yeah, still. I just turned in an episode the other day. Yeah, it's been, when we started that, it was back in 2008. The documentary, the original documentary that aired on the Sci-Fi Network, I didn't work on that. But once they got picked up into a series on travel, Zach reached out and said, "Hey, we need someone that knows haunted locations all over, can help us with the history, with the witnesses, and finding locations." And it was just supposed to be 8 episodes. That's all it was supposed to be way back in 2008. So we did. And it was great. It was really interesting to work in television. And then we got renewed. And then there was spin-off shows like Aftershocks, which I worked on, and spin-off shows like Paranormal Challenge. And then I've worked on other television shows too. Like I worked on a show called Amish Haunting, which is a funny,
I have seen that.
weird stuff. Yeah, so I was a writer on that too. So like it's just one of these things that, you wake up one day and go, wow, this is my job. Who knew, right? I mean, it's just it's pretty awesome. So still going with Ghost Adventures. It's over 220 episodes or something at this point.
Wow.
And it's just been a total juggernaut, but great to work on and be part of something that big.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And then then on top of that, you do your you go to all those libraries too, right? Didn't you just wrap that up?
So I do a story tour every year. I usually do I also speak at conferences and things like that. It's actually my favorite thing to do because when you're a writer, you don't get to sit in people's laps when they read the book and you go like, "Ooh, did you like this paragraph or did you like that paragraph?"
Right.
And when you work on a television show, you generally don't get to sit in the living room with people while they watch it and say, "Well, did you like this? Did you like that?" So when you tell stories in front of a live audience, when you're connecting with them, you see them lean in, you get the body language, you get the immediate feedback. It's amazing because that's how these stories started, right? When we were talking about hauntings and strange phenomena, like it all began like sitting around a fire and telling each other these really profound stories that kind of bind us to each other, but also to where we are and to our history. And so I love that. So I do that at colleges, universities, libraries, corporations, like wherever they'll have me. And I usually do like 50 to 60 speaking gigs a year.
Oh, wow. I couldn't do that. I would freeze.
Yeah.
I am way too shy for that. There's no way. That was like my worst thing in school was like speech.
Well, but the funny thing is, like, I guess, I mean, I've been a performer for my whole life. I play instruments and stuff like that. And there's something really magical that happens when you go on a stage in front of people. There's an energy to the room. And this is, I mean, this taps into a lot of like what we do with paranormal research too, right? Like there's a unique thing that happens in every and you can think about performances you've been to, right? Musicians, plays, speakers, bands, whatever, right? Like stuff you've been in the audience for. There's a two-way street there. There's this like energetic transfer that happens, and as a performer, it's crazy because like you can go out there one night and just kill it, right? You tell these stories and everybody's right there on the edge of their seat and you're just like, oh, they're eating out of your hand. It's amazing. It's magical. And you go the next night to another town on the tour and you go out there and you're just like, oh man, these people are dead. Like there's nothing going, like I'm like, last night I killed him with this. And this is like the same show I did last night in another town. I'm like, come on, work with me. And but there's a different thing happening. And I've noticed that on paranormal investigations. We've done, we've led investigations all over, and we'll do these events where we bring in different groups like every hour, so like I'd stay put in one location and then a different group comes in every hour. And with one group, like it's just weird. There's strange noises and sounds and someone got touched over there and the room's just popping. And then you're like, that's amazing. And the next group comes in for the next hour and you're like, folks, hold on to your hats. Like it's off the charts. Right. And then it's nothing. It's flat. and so you say, the only thing that's changed is you, I mean, new people come in, and I truly believe that every human being is like an ingredient in a stew or a gumbo, And so when certain ingredients or people are lined up correctly, things happen a certain way. And with other ingredients, the stew just doesn't taste too good. And you just kind of want to throw it out and try again.
Yeah, I hear you on that. We do have a question in chat from Darren. He wants to know if you go on investigations alone?
You mean without like just myself or without
just
ghost
yourself.
investigations? Yeah. So what I will, but when I say investigation, like only very high level if I'm going alone, because if I'm really going to get into it, I think 3 is kind of the magical number. 1 is a bad idea because like I like to go to like scary places, and if I fall and break an ankle, if nothing else, there's no one to drag my butt out, right? Like. So there's that. And also for validation, if you do see something, if I'm looking down the hallway and I see a man standing there, I need to be able to say to someone next to me, do you see it too? Right? And if they do see it, well then, okay, obviously something's there. We're both seeing it. And if they say, no, man, I don't even know what you're talking about, then all right, maybe I'm confused or maybe something else is going on. So yes, if it's like a high level like scout kind of thing, sure, I'll go alone quite often because just because I keep weird hours. So, but if we're really going to get in there and try to figure out what's going on, then yeah, I like 3, sometimes 4 people, but nothing too big. I think a low number is ideal.
Yeah, I agree too.
Our group's about 4.
Yeah, we have usually 4. So yeah, that's a
good
pretty good number.
And you can control 4 people. Like you could say like everybody shut up for like 2 minutes while we try something. Like literally say nothing and be silent and don't move.
Exactly.
Once you get to like 6, 8, 10 people, it's just, I'm getting a phone call. I got to take this. So you're like, oh really?
Right.
So it gets tricky to do that. And but yeah, no, 4 is good. My paranormal research team has never lost a member in over 20 years of doing this. Which is,
that's good. That's great.
It's incredible. It's a world record. But also, we've never gained a member either. So there's that. Because it's just me. I'm the only one in my group. And I've... but at the same time, there's a lot of infighting. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. We do have another question from Rebecca, which she is a big fan of yours, she says.
Hi, Rebecca.
She wants to know what your favorite New England legend is.
Oh my God, that's like, what's your favorite kid? Except I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children. So, oh gosh. So every week I do this podcast called New England Legends where we just do this short story, like scripted. We've got voice actors and sound effects and music, and I've been doing it now for almost 2.5 years, and I haven't missed a week in 118 consecutive weeks. And it's been awesome. And what's great is we've got this community of people where we're getting emails and texts all the time of like, hey, have you heard about this story? And then like we've got something else to look into, which is really cool. Like this whole community is building around looking for these weird stories in New England. And these stories are everywhere, by the way. Like, I just happen to live in New England, so it's more convenient for me to get around here than it is to be, getting on an airplane all the time. Right. So anyway, favorite story. The one I keep coming back to for like my current favorite is the story of Rhode Island founder Roger Williams, who was eaten by an apple tree.
Oh yeah, I read something about that.
Yeah, no, it really happened. Like it's funny, gosh. And I've personally seen the tree root that did it. Because it's on display at the Rhode Island Historical Society, and I've read the newspaper accounts. In fact, on our podcast, we had a voice actor read the 1860 newspaper account of when they dug up Roger Williams because they wanted to give him a better grave. He was just in this family plot in Providence, Rhode Island, and they dig him up. And they opened his casket, and an apple tree's roots had grown into the casket and down the length of his body and more or less sucked up the juices of his 100-year-old corpse, right? Oh, my gosh. And turned it into nutrients, which, by the way, is what every single tree on Earth does, right? Animals die in the ground, and their nutrients go into the soil, and the tree sucks them up and turns it into stuff, right? So the tree's just doing what trees do, except it ate Roger Williams, the founder of Rhode Island. And so the voice actor that we used to read this newspaper account was Tim Weisberg, who was your guest last week.
Yes.
So anyway, that's Tim's claim to fame for New England Legends, and just to tie it back to what you guys just did. So it's fun having so many like radio friends, because when I need like a voice actor, I can just call upon so many radio people, and I'll be like, Tim, I need you to read a story from 1860. He's like, I got it. And of course he has all the equipment. So he just sends me back an MP3 file, and it's awesome.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, man. Okay. So let's see here. We have another question. Darren would like to know, what's your favorite case on Ghost Adventures?
That's hard too, because there's been so many. But there was one that we worked on early. I think it was season 2 or 3, and it's a place called the Penhurst School, right outside of Philadelphia, out there in Pennsylvania. And this is one of those cases when we started working on it. When I'm told, like, okay, this is where we're going, I start digging into everything I can find out about the history and what happened there and stuff like that. Right. And so I'm like, okay, an abandoned asylum. I know what to do, right? Like, we've done a few of these now, and I'm not saying they're all alike, because they're not. However, there are certain things that are very similar between an abandoned asylum in Iowa and an abandoned asylum in New York and Michigan and all of it, right? Like the stories are similar.
Yep.
So I start working on Penhurst, and then I learned that there is a federal law called the Penhurst Law. And it has to do with how you can and can't treat people with mental disabilities because of atrocities that took place inside these buildings in the 1970s. 1970s. Like, wow. As in, like, 40 years ago. Like, and so you went, whoa, wait a minute. You assume atrocities took place 100 years ago, 150 years ago. So I started doing some more digging, and it turns out that the conditions in there were so bad. Some patients were kept in dog kennels, like locked up, so they couldn't hurt themselves or anybody else. I spoke to a nurse who said when she first started, there was a row of beds, like 100 beds, where people had just such profound disabilities they can't get out of bed. And her job with another nurse was to change adult diapers. And they would start at one end and just go until they got to the other end at 100 people. And by the time they were done, it's pretty much time to go back to the beginning and start again.
Gosh.
And some of those patients would rub feces in their hair and on their skin, not because they're monsters, but because they knew they would get a bath, and that meant human touch and contact and interaction that they would not get otherwise. And so I spoke to a patient who said if you bit someone more than once, they removed all your teeth.
Oh my gosh.
And they would tell people, they would say, listen, when you drop your loved one off here, don't write to them, don't call, don't come and visit. It's going to mess up their routine. We're the professionals. They're in good hands with us. Just leave it to us. So people were trusting their loved ones to this facility that was underfunded, understaffed, and these horrible, horrible things happened there, and it got shut down in the 1980s. And there was also the deinstitutionalization that President Reagan implemented, which shut down pretty much all those facilities nationwide, which was a terrible thing. It's still a terrible thing. To this day, we've never recovered from that. I mean, our homeless population, things like that, our prison population, we've never recovered from that moment. Anyway, so that's the backstory. And suddenly you go, wait, this isn't just another asylum. This is a place where even worse stuff happened. And I remember we were there filming, and we were there for like 5 minutes and went down into one of the tunnels that connects some of the buildings underground. Not even filming it, no cameras out, nothing. And I was with Zach and Dave Schrader, who's a radio guy and stuff. And so anyway, so we're down there, and we hear this like faint giggle way, way in the distance, and then this rush of cold air just right by. And we looked at each other, and I was just like, oh man, it's like this building wants to talk. It's like, I've been waiting for someone to come tell my story. I'm glad you're here. Like, that's the sense I got, and so that episode, that location, I felt like when it came out, there are certain people that get offended by the notion that places like that are haunted, right? Because they're running off the concept that maybe a ghost is this earthbound spirit that can't get away, and these poor souls have already been through enough. How dare you imply that? I don't think that's always the case. In fact, I think it's rarely the case. And I think sometimes a place is haunted because it should be haunted, and Penhurst is one of them. And if our ghost show can hold up a mirror to America and say, hey, you lived in a country. If you were alive in the 1970s, you lived in a country where you allowed this to happen, right? You didn't take care of the least of our people, right? You allowed it. And we can't do that again. Let this haunt you. Let it not happen again. And I think that's one of the many, many ways that ghosts serve us.
Right.
And that episode, that location just felt like more important than others. Not that, I mean, they're all important in various ways, but that one just felt sort of significant.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Let's see here. Wow. Okay, we've got a couple more questions in here. If you come across a full body apparition, who would you want it to be, and what would you say?
Wow. But, I mean, because like you could go X-rated with that answer easily, right? Like,
yeah, you could.
like that's, and I will admit that was my first thought. Like, hey, now, but then I said, well, no, I should say like Lincoln, right? I should say Abe Lincoln and be like, so how do you think it's going? I'm told you're still very actively haunting the White House and have been since like 1860s. So, any comments? I'd be interested to talk to him, I think. Gosh. Yeah, Lincoln. Like it's funny because like in American history, he's more than an icon. You know what I mean? He's almost to like deity status in American history. He's one of those people we can all agree on in a time when we can agree on nothing.
Right, exactly. That is true.
We can't even agree that vanilla tastes like vanilla, right? Like it's just, but we can agree that like, all right, Lincoln was the greatest, no question.
Yes.
And the thing about it, right, is he's such a benchmark because that was the most difficult presidency by far, bar none. There's no close second, right? There's no one even, you're not even in the same sport, right? Forget the ballpark. You're not even in the same league. Yep. His son died while he was in the White House and tore his family apart. The nation's at war with itself. It's literally tearing the nation apart. Thousands upon thousands dying all the time. And of course, he paid the ultimate price for the office. He was assassinated. And I think that's one of those figures in American history where you say, oh man, I would really like to talk to you. Although I'd be pretty interested to talk to Jesus too, because I think my first question would be like, how do you think it's going? Let's flip through some of these Bible Network TV channels and let's talk about that. What do you think of the faith healer guy? Huh? He's pretty cool. What do you think? Huh? It's pretty cool, right? Like, what have you done? That'd be a fun conversation.
It would be.
Yeah.
It would be.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Rebecca says she'd pick Lincoln as well. Let's see here.
Yeah, we could all hang out. I think I picture him a beer drinker. Do you think I'm wrong?
What?
I picture Lincoln being like a beer drinker. Like you'd have a beer with him.
I could see him with like a big glass
maybe some wings, right? Like some wings and beer. It'd be like, get down on that.
Yeah, I could see him
It'd be in his beard, right? Like the wings and the blue cheese would be in his beard. But he wouldn't care. He wouldn't even care. He'd be like, I'm Abe Lincoln. I'm Abe Lincoln, dude. I'm on your money.
I want.
like I'm gonna wipe this with a $5 bill, son. Like whatever. That's gonna stay there till I want it gone. You want a selfie? I don't care. The wing sauce stays in the beard. I'm in.
Excuse me. Gonna make me start joking. Okay. We have another question here. Oh, I'm starting to get my sexy party voice here. If you had a chance to buy a haunted house or location anywhere, what would it be and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've joked that so the house I live in now is not haunted at all, which is great. Like I do this all day long. I need a break, so like right. I'm totally cool with my house not being haunted. I was recently at the Conjuring house in Rhode Island. I've been there a few times now because I only live about 45 minutes away from it. And we filmed Ghost Adventures, the Halloween special there, and I did my Halloween podcast there. We actually went room to room with audio and kind of did like an audio tour of the house. Mm-hmm. I think it's great. I wouldn't want to own it. And I went to college in Long Island, and my freshman year, first week, I remember someone saying like, "Oh, where are you from?" He goes, "Oh, I live in Amityville." And I went, "Oh, that's crazy." He said, "Yeah, do you want to go see the house?" I'm like, Yes, of course I want to go see the house.
Oh my gosh.
So, you drive by the Amityville house there on Ocean Avenue, and I look at that house, and I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't want to own that either. 6 people were murdered in there. Like that's, you know what? I'm happy to visit these places. I don't want to own one.
Right.
I'm perfectly cool with my my objectivity remains intact, not necessarily having a horse in the race, So, yeah. I wouldn't want to own one, but totally stoked to go visit them.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'm glad that my house isn't haunted. The one I grew up in.
Your folks were.
Yeah, the one I grew up in. That's another story. We go over there to test new equipment when they're out, when they're not home. So
when your parents are not home.
Yeah.
They don't mind as long as they're not there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Turn the hearing aid down, Dad. I'm doing EVP.
Yeah.
So I always wondered, I always picture, imagine an old folks home for paranormal investigators when we're all in our 80s and in wheelchairs and stuff,
Yeah.
And because the awkward thing would be like, oh, Mary Lou died. Hurry, get in there with the EMF meters and the audio recorders before they take the body, right? Like,
Oh my God.
don't take her yet. Mary Lou, can you hear us? Right? Like, I hate you all. Like, the pudding here sucks. It's just, I went to a funeral once for a Salem witch. Which was amazing. Salem, Massachusetts. This guy was one of the high priest of Salem. I forget what he called himself. Colorful character, great guy. And he passed away untimely of an illness. But we went to the funeral, which was held in a funeral parlor. And I want you to picture any funeral parlor you've ever been in your life. That's pretty much what it looked like, right? It's standard funeral parlor,
right.
Except in the casket is this guy totally dressed in black, and there's a human skull being carried around, and there's all these people dressed in this witchy garb, and they're reading from his grimoire and all this other stuff. And I went with another friend of mine who also happens to be a paranormal investigator, and I said, I dare you to bring your EMF meter to this funeral. And it's getting kind of quiet, and he turns on, the cell sensor one that's and I turn over, and he's grinning, and he holds out his hand, and I reach into my wallet, and I give him the money because a bet's a bet. Homeboy goes up to kneel down in front of the casket, and it looks like he's praying, but I know he's got his audio recorder in one of his fists. And the best part about all this all sounds very crass, I know, but all I'm saying is you got to trust me. If you knew all the people involved, the guy that was in the casket would have thought that was cooler than anybody else in the room. He would have been like, oh, yes, please, right? Put the EMF meter right on my chest. It's totally cool that you're doing this. He was just that kind of guy. But that was the coolest funeral I've ever been to.
Oh my gosh.
They should all be like that.
Yeah, they should be. Oh my gosh, yeah. That would have been cool. Let's see. We have another question here. This is a little bit different, but what are your views on psychics?
I knew you were going to ask that.
We didn't. They did in the chat.
They did in the chat.
Yeah, I knew they were going to chat that.
You must be psychic.
I must be. So it's tough because I can't relate, right? And so I recognize that. Mm-hmm. If someone says, Jeff, there's a little girl in a red dress standing behind you right now in this haunted building, I'll turn around and I'll look. I will. Mm-hmm. But if I don't see the little girl in the red dress, we're at an impasse, right?
Right.
I'm not going to call you a liar, but I'm also not going to believe you, right? That's just where we're at. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have to just agree to disagree. Yet, let me also say that I recognize we all have intuition. We all have gut feelings.
Right.
And we ignore those at our peril. So I've walked into buildings on the rare occasion, but once in a blue moon, I will walk into a building and I'll go, oh my God, it feels electric in here. It feels like there's people in here that I can't see. That very rarely happens because I consider myself as psychic as a fence post, but I recognize that what I'm sensing, if you wanted to label that psychic, okay, fair enough, right? That's as fine a label as any other. So for the most part, and then the other thing too is that, man, they can cloud the waters sometimes because they don't ever have to justify anything. Oh, I'm saying, Lizzie Borden's father raped her, right? Like, and psychics have said that, and we don't have anything to know that that's true or not. Yet you've just really slandered a person who may be innocent, and that's quite a thing to lay on someone. So the Conjuring house, right? Did you see the movie, The Conjuring?
Yep, I have.
So in the movie, spoilers, whatever, it's an old movie. You should have seen it by now. So spoilers. Right. So the Bathsheba is the monster, the witch, the demon, right, in the movie, who murdered children in that house, and now she's trying to get the mother to murder her children. Like that's the movie.
Yep.
Lorraine Warren, when she was in that house way back when, 1973, I guess she psychically got this name Bathsheba out of the ethers or whatever. Bathsheba is not an uncommon old-fashioned name, but that's the name she got. In the center of town, there's a cemetery, and Bathsheba Sherman, who really did live in that town, is buried there. And for like 120 years, that woman rested in peace. And then suddenly, because of the movie, she's a villain. And you can Google and you can figure out, oh, Bathsheba Sherman, she's a real person. And she really did murder kids in that house. I don't even know if she's ever been in that house, let alone murdered anybody. And I read all the newspaper accounts. No child died in her care as far as I've seen. Like none of it's true. And yet, because of that movie, people go to the cemetery in the center of town, and they've kicked her headstone over so many times that the local historical societies gathered it up, and it's now in hiding, so it doesn't get destroyed anymore. And so, again, you've got an innocent person who's been dragged through the mud by a psychic who I believe was like 99.9% wrong. Like straight up wrong. And I say that about, Lorraine Warren. I'm saying it. And I knew her. I called me honey all the time. Sweet lady. But wrong. You know, I'm wrong in that case anyway. And so if you don't know if you're 100% right, I don't know. I'm of the opinion maybe you just don't say anything. And so that's the part I really struggle with psychics. When you're going to start dragging people's names through the mud who can't defend themselves. Who may not have had anything to do with the thing you're saying. And then you get to justify it like, well, that's what the spirits told me. I'm like, really? Well, the history books, the newspaper accounts, the journals, and the extensive research doesn't agree with you. So now what?
Right. Exactly.
You guys got to stop smoking. They don't know, but I can see you on video.
Huh?
They don't know because they can't see the video, but I could see you guys on video. They're like ripping butts left and right through this thing.
Man, I am really just, I've been through 2 packs already. Just sitting here for the last 30 minutes.
Well done.
Excuse me. Okay, we have a couple more questions here.
Sure.
From Darren, he wants to know, do you have some new ideas for Ghost Adventures?
Yes.
And do you believe in holy water, or is it just water?
Oh, so okay, that I can answer. There's always new ideas. Oh my God! For just to answer the first part, there's always new ideas, right? There's always a new angle to take, a new thing to uncover on every story ever. So that I don't lose any sleep over that. Holy water. I don't know why, but boy, does it burn when it hits my skin. It just burns and burns. And I just, it's like acid when it gets flung at me. I just run away hiding because it hurts so bad. The thing about holy water is if you believe in it, it works. And that's true of any spiritual symbol, right?
Yep.
Like when a Christian wears a cross around their neck, it's just the letter T. That's all it is, unless you believe in it. Unless you believe in something much bigger than that it symbolizes and so on, and it might protect you, it might give you strength, all kinds of things, then it has power, right? Or a pentacle, or a crescent and a star, or Star of David, whatever that thing is that you believe in. Holy water, I think, is the same thing. Now, when you see some of the TV shows and stuff, and they go at it from like a very Catholic, actually, not even Christian, but Catholic perspective, when they start flinging holy water and things like that in a location trying to get the evil demons out. I always thought, like, what if the ghost is Jewish? Like, well, what is this? What's with the water? Hey, bring me some latkes or something. Like, I'm like, I mean, if someone walked into think about you, right? If right now someone walked into your room where you are and started throwing holy water at you, would you be like, what are you doing?
I probably would be. I'd be like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Step off. Like, you got beer? Like, I mean,
you can throw beer
right? Like, if you throw beer at me, I'll try to catch it. Right. Like that's, but what's happening when you're using holy water or holy symbols or whatever, you are trusting that your faith is going to protect you and vanquish whatever happens to be there. I think, and the funny thing too is when people come in, and if you're dealing with a family that's not your own, ask them what their religious leanings are. Because if they're not Christian or Catholic and you're coming in with holy water, well, I don't know. It's just seems like it's like trying to bang a nail in the wall with like the end of a screwdriver. I mean, you can, but it's not the right tool for the job.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's not going to work the way it's supposed to. That's not what that tool is for. So anyway, the right tool for the right job, I think, is a good thing to keep in mind.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we have a question from Rebecca. She wants to know, what was your most exciting project to research?
Oh, wow. So years ago, I wrote a book called Communicating with the Dead. And it was about all the various methods and means that people use to try to communicate with spirits. So like the history of the Ouija board and dowsing rods and rune stones and tarot cards and all kinds of very esoteric tools, but also like EVP and instrumental trance communication and ITC and things like that. And while I was working on that, I stumbled across a bunch of writing by Thomas Edison about his forays into spirit communication. And it was really interesting because I found this book called The Diary and Sundry Observations of Thomas Alva Edison. And I'm a book guy, so I've got the first edition. And I got it on eBay years ago, whatever. So I get the book, and I'm like, oh, his writing on spirit communication was supposed to be in here, but it's not in here. And so I was like, oh man. So then let's say the book had like 180 pages in it. And I went, well, that's weird. And then I went on eBay again and I found another first edition that had 240 pages, 60 pages longer. Right. Wow. So I bought that one too. They weren't terribly expensive. They were just, I just wanted to have copies of them. Right. And then that one arrived, and all 60 pages were about spirit communication and all of his essays and thoughts on it and the devices he was trying to build, and claimed he was actively testing with colleagues who had recently passed away. Both of them called first editions. Oh, wow. And so I looked into like this can't be right. Like that's not how books work. There's only one first edition. Right. So anyway, I'm looking into this. Now you got to keep in mind, Thomas Edison is like one of the founders of General Electric Company. Like, and at the time this book came out in the early 1940s, like GE is a household name. And it's been a household name right up until a few years ago when it just like its stock turned into like a penny stock. But So what happened was the book came out, and it was such an embarrassment to GE and the family that they sort of insisted that everything get removed. And so whatever got out there and was sold, and the rest were either destroyed or whatever, and they put out this new first edition that had all that stuff stripped out. I own both copies, which is awesome. So I was blown away because I talked to like some Edison scholars and the Edison Museum, both the one in Ohio and the one in New Jersey. And I said, look, he it's not like he said a passing comment about this. He wrote about it again and again and again, like pages and pages of stuff. Right. And when what he described sounds almost like a telegraph, right? So the telegraph is the thing that pulled this guy into science in the first place. Like he wanted to know how the telegraph worked when he was a small child. He loved the idea that someone could hit a button here and hundreds of miles away, the signal goes all the way through these wires, this invisible signal, and it gets set off somewhere else. He thought that this is amazing. And so he developed the way he described it. It sounds like a telegraph for the dead, except it takes so little energy to manipulate this Just, he's assuming that in the next life you don't have a lot of energy like you do now to just push something. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I still think something could be out there, something that would blow our minds that Edison was working on, whether it's plans, like detailed like schematics or whatever of stuff he was working on,
right?
Or maybe even like a prototype or an actual like working model of something that he built. And I just think it's either locked away or it's in someone's collection and they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things, like it's like this project in the back of my mind I keep meaning to get to, like, but when am I going to like have the time to go to New Jersey for like 2 weeks and dig through all the archives? And it's just one of those things that I just keep thinking like, yeah, one day I'm going to get to that.
Oh yeah, that would be very interesting because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it would be interesting to see. I mean, maybe he does have something hidden away, and that would be pretty cool to actually.
Well, the thing is, like, he wouldn't have done the hiding, right? So
somebody else.
Yeah, when he was working on it, however he worked, whatever he put his stuff. So when he passed away, someone either took that or hid it or something, right? And so, is there a trail we can follow? I guess is the big question. But I love the way Edison was a true person of science because, like I said, the telegraph, and in his book, which is a great book about his views, he said he didn't know how the telegraph worked, and he asked an old Scottish lineman, how does this thing work? And the lineman explained it to them. Well, imagine a dog that whose head is in London and whose tail is in Edinburgh, Scotland, right?
Yeah.
And if you pull the tail in Scotland, he's going to bark in London. And so Edison was like, I get it. I get that. Okay, that makes sense to me. It's just scale, right? I totally get that. So he looked at everything and said, like, it's just a question of science. How can we solve it? And I think he looked at the idea of life after death and spirits and ghosts and spirit communication the same way that he looked at the telegraph or anything else. Like, okay, how does it work? How can we make it work? And today it's too bad that like some of our best minds don't look at this subject because it had pretty much trashed their careers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a shame that it's sort of left to the rest of us. But man, I kind of feel like if you could find that validation from Edison to be like, look, Edison looked into it. It's okay if you do too,
Right. Yeah.
I feel like there's his name has got enough gravitas to it that people might get behind something like that, or at least explore it more.
Let's see. Rebecca thought maybe there was like a record player thing in the Edison Museum.
Yeah.
Well, he's got the phonograph, right? I mean, he invented the phonograph. He was the Edison was the guy that invented the first. He did not invent the first recording device, but he did invent the first recording device that could also play back, the phonograph. And so yeah, who knows? Who knows? Maybe he was getting EVPs back then, right? Mary Had a Little Lamb, and then play it back and like get out. Mary Had a Little Lamb, get out. Oh.
Oh, let's see here. Okay, this is kind of a long question here. Let's see here. So on a regular house haunting, you do all the necessary searching on the land and history of the location. Do you think a log cabin haunting would be more aggressive, seems how it's made from earth materials?
I don't know. I haven't found like any steadfast rules on this.
Yeah, I have.
You know what I mean?
I
shoot, there's brand new constructions that are haunted. And you say, and then you just go like, oh, Indian burial ground. Like, I know it's all Indian burial ground, the whole United States.
Right.
But I think I don't know, right? And not only that, the building is just one piece of the equation. The humans that visit or live in the building are the other piece, right? That's the ingredient in the stew. And again, to go back to the Amityville house, right? So when the Lutz family lived there, it was profoundly bad, according to the Lutz family. And I did the last interview with George Lutz. He's the guy that, his story was made into all the books and movies. And I interviewed him extensively for one of my books, Our Haunted Lives. And so, and I know Chris Lutz, he was a kid at the time living in the house, and he talked about what happened. So something happened in that house, and the family left after just 4 weeks, according to them. However, another family moved in after them and lived there for years and years without a problem. And so maybe, just maybe, like that house is haunted. 6 people were murdered in it, no question. Like that happened because the guy that did it is still in jail. And so a certain family moves in and doesn't see it. It ignores it. It's not compatible, and so it's just not active. A more sensitive family moves in, and it's the scariest place on earth, So I don't know if a log cabin or a stone, building or whatever makes all that much of a difference, because shoot, we found cases where, look, a building could be completely torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. And it still seems to be haunted, even though like 95% of the building materials are brand new,
right?
But sitting on the footprint of the old building, I don't know. I really think ghosts have way more to do with living people than dead ones, right? Because a ghost doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's no ghost without a human witness. And that includes, like, if you want to just put in video cameras and then like leave the building, you're still there by proxy, right? You're still You're still in the equation via the video camera,
right?
So, I don't know if, I wouldn't say that a log cabin would be more or less haunted than anything else. It's all depends on the situation, the ghosts, the people, and everything else.
Okay, let's see here. We got a couple more here. What's the one object in the world that you never want to be haunted?
A toilet plunger.
I haven't heard that one yet. He asks that pretty much every show.
Yeah.
Kind of has a poll going to see.
Now that I've had time to really think that answer through, I'm sticking with toilet plunger.
There you go.
You do not,
good
because
answer.
When you need a toilet plunger, that's an emergency, and I don't need it to be haunted, because I need it right now before the water comes up and over and starts making a mess.
Yeah. So
I am sticking steadfast with that answer.
That is a good one. And then, what's your favorite Ed and Lorraine Warren story?
There's this little cemetery in Easton, Connecticut called Union Cemetery. And when I was growing up, and this is the town next to Monroe, Connecticut, which is where they lived most of their lives, and 2 towns away from where I grew up. And so I remember as a kid hearing about the White Lady of Easton, and she's this white wispy apparition that's been seen in the cemetery and along the road leading up to the cemetery. It's one of those stories that like kind of everybody knew. And Ed Warren told me, he'd gone and looked into it plenty of times, and so he was telling me about investigating this thing. So one night he goes out there and he sets up a video camera right at the entrance of the cemetery, and I was watching the video, and this apparition forms into this human shape. I would even go so far as to call it feminine, but you couldn't really make out any features, but it sort of looked feminine, and it's moving around the headstones, coming toward the camera. This black stuff comes up from the ground, sucks it down into the ground, and then the whole thing was over.
Wow.
And I watched the video several times, and I went, man, if Spielberg didn't help you with this video, then I don't know. If that's not a ghost, then I don't know. I mean, right? Because with any paranormal person, sometimes they show you videos or pictures and they go, see, you can see a face in that orb. And I usually go, I don't see it. I see what you're saying, but I'm not ready to say that's a face.
Right.
With this video though, I was like, yep. That's a ghost. That would be my expert opinion on that one. And so that one, I think I love the fact that he just had the patience to sit out there and just roll tape and see if he could see her. And that one night he did. Wow. It was amazing. And I also thought they told the Annabelle story quite well. Mm-hmm. If you've seen the movie, the Annabelle doll in the movies, it's freaky as all get out. The real Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll. Yeah. Which to me was twice as scary because my sister had the same exact doll.
Oh my gosh.
Growing up, and so I mean, I've stood right in front of that little cabinet that says "Do not touch," and I've seen her, and
oh, wow.
They tell the story, and it's funny because it gives it power. Now, I'm actually not a very superstitious person. If you said, "Do you want to hold the doll?" I actually would have. I would have. Yeah, whatever. I mean. Although, like, if anything bad happened, like, I could get a paper cut the next day and I'd be like, oh, my God, that's Annabelle, right? Like, I drop a coffee mug the next morning, it shatters on the floor. Uh-oh, right? Like, something's afoot. So, anyway, it was, it's one of those things that, but I thought, like, he was especially a gifted storyteller and really drew you into the cases that they worked on. And I think that was one of their gifts.
Yeah, that would be amazing to see. That
I still have my Raggedy Ann doll that I grew up with.
Why don't you just truck her around and claim that she's Annabelle?
There we go.
Yeah, you can make some money with her. Finally.
Nah, I can't do that.
Someone else is out there doing it. I forget who, but like, there's someone that was going to paranormal conferences with a Raggedy Ann doll in a like a glass case and saying like, I got this from a relative, and they're just frauds, right?
But my gosh.
I like John. I couldn't do that to him.
No. Oh, John Zaffis? Yeah.
I couldn't do that to him.
I knew John when he had hair. Like that's how long I've known that guy. Like it was a million years ago. It was so funny. Like we were,
he's a very nice guy when we met him up in Minnesota.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, no, it's an interesting community. Like especially when I've been a part of it for decades now, and you just kind of get to know everybody that's doing this, and I think it's cool that people kind of step off the beaten path and say, like, I'm going to try to figure this out. I'm going to try to pursue this and see where it leads me, wherever that may be. I think it's kind of cool. I respect that in people.
Let's see. Do we have any more questions?
No, I was just looking. Let's see. No more questions, but I do. I want to talk a little bit about that beer bottle church.
Okay.
I listened to that the other night, and I thought that was very interesting, but I also loved your guys' little singing at the end.
Yeah, we're going to be big. We're going to go on the road with that.
I know. That's what I told Kim. I'm like, they should go on the road. It was actually not too bad.
I know. So, like, well, Ray is my co-host in the podcast. Ray is he's not only a morning DJ, but he's also in like 5 bands. He's a singer, and he's good. Wow. Like, I mean, like legit good.
Yeah.
So, and I've been playing guitar for years, and so we've actually done a few musical interludes over the years. Mm-hmm. But that one just seemed to fit. So the Beer Bottle Church is in Hampton Falls, New Hampshire, mm-hmm. and it's one of these things where we have a Google text number where people can text us stuff, whatever they want. And someone's like, "Hey, have you heard of Beer Bottle Church?" And I'm like, "Ray, Beer Bottle Church? Like that is so up our alley." That's all I knew. That's like all I knew is there's a place called Beer Bottle Church in Hampton Falls, New Hampshire. That's it. That's the whole, all of it. And I'm like, we're on our way, right? Like. This is our kind of church. We should probably be priests in this church, probably archbishops, I guess, by this point. And so we go there, and it's this pretty white New England church. It looks like any church you've ever seen in New England, like the tall white steeple and all that. It's a First Baptist church. And at the top, you look and you're like, dude, that is a beer bottle. It's this little white ornament at the very top of the spire, and it looks exactly like a beer bottle. Mm-hmm. And so, and below it, there's a clock that says, instead of numbers, 1 through 12, it says memorial gift. Mm-hmm. And so the whole church has got these funny legends around it. And if Baptists are generally have a funny relationship with alcohol, right? I don't mean to stereotype all Baptists. I mean, whatever, right? But there's, there's a joke, right? If you go fishing with a Baptist, you have to bring two of them, because if you bring one, he'll drink all your beer, right?
Never heard that one before.
I hadn't either.
Yeah. So the other one, kind of keeps them honest. So, and so, and a dear friend of mine from high school is a Baptist minister, and I said I ran that joke by him before I told it, like in the episode and stuff. And I said, what's up with Baptists and booze? I said, listen, I abstain all you want. It's more for me. Like I have no issue with people not drinking. It's fine. Uh-huh. But he said, yeah, no. He's like, there's definitely a funny relationship there. So the irony of having a beer bottle on top of your church would be, quite something. So anyway, we do break into song. We go into the 5:00 somewhere.
Yes.
Of course, when the clock doesn't have numbers and it has letters, you got to change the words a little bit. So we did.
Oh. Let's see. Rebecca said that she had been waiting on a podcast on the legend of Sleepy Hollow, but someone pointed out that New York isn't part of New England, and she has a sad face.
Listen, Rebecca, we did an episode on the Headless Horseman of Canton, Connecticut, which predates the Sleepy Hollow legend. And Canton, Connecticut is only like 100 miles north of Tarrytown, New York, which is where Sleepy Hollow is, of course. And you could make some arguments that it's possible that the Canton Headless Horseman story inspired Washington Irving and not the other way around. It's a really cool story. I love this stuff, right? Like I love how it's so interconnected between legend, lore, paranormal, like all that stuff. Like you can't talk about one without the other.
Right.
There's a reason that paranormal investigators go to investigate certain buildings. It's because they heard a story. Mm-hmm. It always starts with a story. Right. If you were really trying to be a scientist about it, you'd be like, look, a Walgreens that's been open for 6 months. Let's go look for ghosts. But you don't, because that's not interesting. You're like, it's 6 months old, dude. And before that, it was a gas station. Who cares, right? Like, But at the same time, if you really want to be objective, then you should be looking for ghosts in the Walgreens and in the Villisca Axe Murder House and in the abandoned asylum and in the brand new mega mall, like whatever. But no, we're drawn to a story where we go, I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm willing to go investigate and take a closer look. And that's how powerful that this stuff can be.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
You want to tell him what Rebecca said?
Oh, let's see here.
Her relatives.
Oh, her relatives are...
Her relatives buried the Headless Horseman.
Oh, they buried him. Oh.
In New York?
She's a descendant of...
the Van Tassels.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well... Tell her to stay the hell away from me.
Darren says Walmarts are scary. Walmarts are.
They are.
They are
I'm
scary.
just kidding, Rebecca. That's awesome that your family buried the Headless Horseman before we got to interview him and find out the whole story. Totally cool.
All right. Let's go ahead and before we start to wrap things up, where can anyone find like your books, your podcasts?
My books are usually in the bathroom near the toilet. You mean the books I've written?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. See, that makes more sense now. That's the silly
you want
thing.
them to come raid your bathroom for a book?
No, okay. No, that's okay. Thanks for clarifying. It's right near my haunted plunger. So, my books are on Amazon. You can check them out there or wherever you get your books. I'm working on some new stuff all the time. So there's that. The podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts, whether iTunes or Google or Stitcher, Spotify, whatever. It's called New England Legends, and it's free. You can subscribe. They're short. Every Thursday at noon, we put out a new story. They're just like 10, 12 minutes. And it's just like a fun story we talk about tons of ghosts, haunted places, monsters, cryptids, weird history, all of it, strange but true. And I also I speak at conferences all over the world, really. But I love sharing these stories. I think it's important that we talk about this stuff. And if you have Amazon Prime, the New England Legends television series, which I did for PBS, is on there right now. And actually, I host that, I write it, I produce it. So that's for free on Amazon Prime. We've got 7 episodes up, and our 8th one we hope to have up a Christmas special, believe it or not. A very creepy Christmas. Yeah, should be up in the next couple of weeks. So we've just filmed one of the last segments today, and always working on new stuff because I love this. This is my life.
Yeah. Excuse me. Those damn cigarettes are getting to me again.
Yeah, time to quit.
I'm not even smoking.
I'm saying like I smoked. All right, I'm just going to go through real quick, give quick shout-outs to everybody who was in chat tonight. We had Shay, we had Darren, we had Rebecca, we had Matt, we had Jen B in the house, we had Wolf. Thank you, everybody, for all the awesome questions tonight. Thank you for everybody who was listening but not in chat. We want to thank Jeff for being our guest tonight.
Yay!
Yes, woohoo! Everybody
Awesome
is saying,
show.
yeah, everybody's saying that they loved it, that you're an awesome guest. So,
Well, thank you.
Thank you for being on. Next week we are off, obviously, for Thanksgiving, and then I'm going to be working on guests for the new year. So, just stay tuned, and I guess I'll have to post something whenever I figure it out because I've been slacking lately. But thank you again, Jeff, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to REP Paranormal and Friends. Be sure to check out Kim and Allison on Facebook at REP Paranormal Busters.